Welcome to Born or Made, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of success and identity. Are the traits that define us as leaders ingrained from birth, or are they carved out throughout our experiences? Join your host, Anne-Marie LaTulip, as we ask these questions to some of the most insightful and inspiring entrepreneurs of our time. Each episode, we explore their journeys, the decisions that shaped them, and how they've molded their own paths to success. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply curious about the interplay between nature and nurture in professional growth, you're in the right place. Get ready for compelling stories, transformative insights, and a new perspective on what it really takes to make it in the world of entrepreneurship.
Hello and welcome back to the Born or Made podcast. I am your host, Anne-Marie LaTulip, and with me today I have the lovely Lynda Sunshine West. And let me tell you a little bit about Lynda. Lynda Sunshine West is the founder and CEO of Action Takers Publishing, a best-selling book publishing expert, speaker, 38 times #1 international best-selling author, former contributing writer at Entrepreneur Magazine, senior level executive contributing writer at Brainz Magazine, and executive film producer. Wow, I can't wait to talk to you about that. Lynda, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Anne-Marie. I love this topic, and so I'm excited to dive in.
Well, good. I'm so glad. But first I want, for anyone that doesn't, I know a little bit about you, but for anyone that's listening that might not, would you mind taking just a few minutes and tell us about Lynda?
Sure. Yeah. I ran away at 5 years old and I was gone an entire week. Now, something happened in that week that I'll share with you in a second. But first, I'll let you know that I was safe. I was in a safe environment. I just ran away to the neighbor's house, but nobody came to get me. And so as a 5-year-old, remember back to when you were 5, how everything was amplified, right?
Mhm.
And so because nobody came to get me, I was instilled with this belief that they didn't come to get me because they didn't love me and they didn't want me around. And that was the belief that I carried with me until I was 51 years old. So I had this tremendous amount of guilt and fear. And I also became one of the greatest people pleasers on the planet.
Mhm.
I know that many of you can relate to that, being a people pleaser.
Oh yeah.
Fortunately, about age 51, I ended up meeting a life coach, and she helped me to see that I have value, I have purpose, I have a reason to be here. And that put me on the path of trying to discover, like, who am I? What am I all about? And how am I here to serve this planet while I'm here? And so it's been an incredible journey. I'm, now 61, and things can't be any better. I mean, I don't imagine that they can be, but maybe they can be. So I'm excited about this topic again because born or made. I was born a leader, but because of what happened at 5, that was stifled. And I really just like shrunk into a ball so much that I would walk around looking at the ground. I never looked at people in the eyes until I was 51 years old. That's how much fear I had. Yeah.
Wow,
So
that's a long time.
it's been a journey. Yeah, to say the least.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, I have so many questions. I hope you don't mind me diving into this because
Oh,
I,
dive in, dive in.
I really, at 5 years old, you had the wits about you to know. I'm assuming it was a tumultuous uh, environment. Yes.
Yes, it was a volatile, abusive, alcoholic environment. My dad was very abusive. And I realized, yeah, at 5 years old, like, I don't want this life. I don't want to live here. This is not right. This is not for me. And so I like packed up my bags. I didn't pack up any bags, but so to speak, like I packed up my bags and moved. And I didn't know when I moved or left, I didn't know I was going to be gone as long as I was. I was probably secretly deep down thinking, gosh, I hope they want me, you know?
Wow. So
Yeah.
you
So,
went to the neighbors,
mhm.
and the neighbors didn't try to send you back or call
Well,
your
my
parents or.
Yeah, my mom and the neighbors, they knew each other. So I forgot to mention that part is my mom knew where I was the whole time. So she knew that I was safe, but
Okay,
this 5-year-old didn't know she knew where I
that she knew.
was. Yeah, I'm number 4 of 5 kids. So my mom was probably like, oh, she's safe down there. This is what I'm imagining. My mom's passed on, so I can't even ask her. But I'm imagining she was like, she's safe there. I know everything's okay. And then after a week, she was like, she called the neighbor. Linda's been gone long enough. You can bring her home now. So, so they were in
Wow.
communication with each other for sure.
Wow, that's something. Well, like I said, you knew it was you had to be in a better place, and that was
Yeah.
something that you were 5 years old. I remember I tried to run away a few times, and my mom would help me pack, and then she'd be like, "All right, go ahead. Like, let me know how you make out." Obviously to
Right.
show that I wasn't really going anywhere, but you actually really did, and that's so. How was it when you got back? I mean, how did things from 5 to 51? That's a long time.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Well,
when
when I came home, I literally came home. I say I came home with my tail between my legs, my head bent down. So I wouldn't look anybody in the eyes for so many years to come. And there was just this amount of fear that was like just engulfed within me. And I mentioned the fear because at 51, I realized I had so many fears and that fear was stopping me from living my life. And that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to break through a fear every day for an entire year. That was that catalyst, that realization that I had let fear stop me from living so many years, but
wow.
no more, no more.
And it was a life coach that helped you realize this, yeah?
Yes, definitely. It's kind of interesting. I was gonna say funny, but it wasn't really funny. I was driving to work one day and I was working for a judge in the Court of Appeals, which is the highest job you can have. I'm in California. And well, I was a legal secretary at the time. And I was driving to work that day and I was like, oh my God, I hate my life. This is awful. I thought I was gonna love this job. It was my 49th job in 36 years. And I was like, this is the job for me. It's perfect. But then after about 13 months, realizing that I hated it. And I was driving to work that day and I was pounding my hands on the steering wheel and literally like just screaming at the top of my lungs and crying. Like, why am I here? What's the purpose? There's no value in me. I have nothing to do. All I do is push papers around for this judge. And I just felt so filled with anger and hate. And then when I got to work that day, there was a Facebook post inside of a Facebook group. So thank you, Facebook. You changed my life. But there was this post and it was from a life coach. It said, I'm a life coach. I took some time off. I'm getting back into it. And I'm looking for 5 women who want to change their lives. I
Wow.
didn't know what a life coach was. All I knew was I wanted to change my life. And this woman spoke to me in that post. And so I ended up hiring her, worked with her for 5 months, every single week for 5 months. And my life transformed just in that 5-month period of time. But at the end of the 5 months, I was like, I want to keep it going. And that's when I decided to break through a fear every day, for that 1 year. It was amazing.
Wow. Can you talk about that a little bit? I'm sure
Yeah.
people listening are curious of how you did that.
Yeah. I ended up, well, first of all, a lot of people ask me, they say, I don't think I have that many fears. And I didn't think I had that many fears either, you know, but really what it boiled down to was one main fear that needed to be chipped away at day after day after day in order for me to rid that fear of my life. And that was the fear of judgment. The
Mm,
vast majority of us have the fear of judgment, not all of us, but we have that. So if you think about it, there's a saying that says more people are scared of speaking on stage than they are of dying. And that's not true. The truth is that more people are scared of the judgment that they might receive on stage than they are of dying. And then there's like the fear of success, which if you really think about it, the fear of success is if I become successful, what will my family think of me? What will these people think of me? It's all judgment from the other people.
mm,
Fear of failure. If I fail, what will they think of me? It's really the fear of judgment, one big fear. So if we really look at the vast majority of our fears, we can usually sink them down to it's the fear of judgment. So this was my realization. Some of the fears I had was, I'll give you an example of how scared I was of people, especially. One day I woke up and so the process was when I wake up, every morning, I'm going to ask myself a question. And before I get out of bed, I'm going to wait for the answer. And the question is, what scares me? And then I wait until the very first answer pops into my head. Sometimes it was instantaneous, as if I had been dreaming about it, waiting for me to wake up and ask the question. And sometimes it would be 10 or 15 minutes. But my commitment to myself was that no matter what the fear is, no matter what it is, I am going to break through that fear that day. And so some of them were like, go to Starbucks and talk to a stranger,
Oh,
go to a movie theater by myself, go to a restaurant and say only one in my party. That was, oh my gosh, I just felt like people were going to be staring at me. Oh, that poor woman over there. She has nobody. She has to eat by herself. These were my fears, and they were legitimate,
wow.
legitimate fears. So I
Wow.
want to share one thing about that, about fear, is that
Yeah.
um sometimes like we have these fears. My fears might have been ridiculous to some people, but for me, they were debilitating. Debilitating. So no matter how big or small your fear is fear.
Hmm.
So I realized, during that year that, my fears were strong and again, debilitating for me, and that I had to break through those fears. I had to in order to grow.
Hmm.
And I'm so glad I did. That was the greatest year of the scariest and greatest year of my entire life, because my shell started being chipped away at. That fear that I had. I now look people straight in the eyes. I give hugs now, something I wouldn't do before because I was scared. There's so many things that I feel like I lived a sheltered life because I allowed my fear to stop me.
Wow. Well, thank goodness. Thank goodness for that life coach and that post that day,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yes.
that's just such a pure example of, I truly believe everything happens for a reason, and where we're supposed to be, when we're supposed to be there. We see what we're supposed to see. You know what I mean? So that is amazing to me. Now, I'd like, if you don't mind, I would love to talk about life coaching, because I think a lot of people might confuse life coaching with, say, therapy, or going to a psychologist. So can you tell us a little bit about what life coaching is like, and have, if you've ever had therapy, could you explain maybe the difference?
I haven't had therapy because I was too scared. Okay, so
Oh, oh no.
too scared to talk to anybody. But I can share my experience of working with a life coach, because I'm not a life coach myself, but I can share my experience. And
Yeah.
what I loved about her, her name is Liz Stone, and she's in Canada. What I absolutely loved about Liz is that she knew the exact questions that I needed to be asked. And something she discovered, I'd say maybe the first four sessions. After about the first four sessions, she said, you know, you don't have to have the right answer. That was big for me because, I was always an A student, and I always needed to be, as a people pleaser, I always wanted to give the right answer. And so she discovered that when I would answer her questions, that I was trying to come up with the answer that I thought she wanted me to say. So that was a huge break right there, that I don't have to have the right answer, because my answer for me is the right answer. I don't have to impress her or what have you. So
Mhm.
that was one of the first things. But she always knew exactly what I needed in the moment. I'll share an example. There was this one exercise that we did, and I'll just call it the love exercise. And that was that she told me, she said, for the next week, anytime you're doing something or thinking about something that you absolutely love, write it down. And so I made this list, and my list was, I don't know, probably about 30 items on the list. And so the next week I come back to the session. She goes, awesome, let me hear your list. So I rattle off my list. And she says, now here's what I want you to do. Every day, I want you to do 5 minutes of one of those things on your list every day. And the reason for this is because I had spent, as a people pleaser, I spent my whole life doing what you loved and what you wanted. I didn't even know who I was. I didn't know what I loved. I didn't know what I hated. And I tried it myself. I used to say, I'm a chameleon. I can blend into any situation. And I was proud of that. But now as I look back, like that was my protection, that was my protection zone, protecting myself from any potential judgment.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
finding a good life coach is imperative, that you find one that gets you, understands you, and can see who you really are and help bring that out. And that's what she did for me. It was absolutely incredible.
Wow. That's incredible. I can relate to that somewhat. The chameleon, what you said about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is something I pride myself on because, yeah, I can adapt. Yeah, I can adapt. But you're right. There is that fear of judgment, I think. And like you said, I think probably everybody struggles with it to some degree, maybe
Mhm.
some more than others. But it's funny when you said fear of speaking on stage because that comes up often in my podcast because I am a performer and my audience is probably so sick of this story, but you don't know it. So I have a performance background, and so, being on stage is very natural for me, but being on stage playing a character is natural for me, not being Anne Marie on stage, right?
Oh.
So that's the difference is, you're so vulnerable when you're up there as yourself that it's terrifying, right? For some people, I would imagine. But
It used to be for me.
yeah,
Yeah, it definitely. But I met with Les Brown. I had an amazing opportunity to sit with him for a few hours. And one thing he said a lot of things that were incredible, of course. But the one thing that he said that really stuck with me was don't let what you want to say get in the way of what the audience needs to hear. And that
right,
is judgment. See, what's happening is we're so worried about how we're going to show up, what we're going to look like, if we're going to stumble over our words, if we're going to, just like mess up on things, are we going to look stupid, whatever. We're so focused on ourselves that we forget we're not there for ourselves, there for them. And
right,
so that one small phrase right there, I guess I'm a person who learns off of small phrases because my mentor, gave me 4 words. I'll share with you in a second,
yeah,
4 words that totally changed my life. But it's it's the thing is that when we show up, when I go on stage now,
yeah,
I don't have fear. And they say everybody has nervousness. I don't anymore. Does that mean I don't care? Because that's what I've heard. If you're not nervous, you don't care. And that's not true at all. I care a lot, but I no longer have the fear of judgment. I have ridded myself a year of spending on, I have rid myself of the fear of judgment. So when I show up now, I just get on stage and I'm excited to be there, excited to see what do I say? What is going to come out of my mouth? I'm so
wow,
excited. I have no idea how I'm going to act. Am I going to say something silly? Probably because I always do. So how am I showing up? But the thing is, the key is to show up as ourselves authentically, as who we are. And people are going to love us because we're showing up authentically as who we are.
absolutely. That's so
Yeah.
true because that's even true, you know, in I do a lot of video content. And those are the videos that seem to get the most attention. It's just when you're being your silly self and not putting on some, edited fancy video, right? So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
similar.
The other day I did a video and I started off like, I did it. I did it. I did it. And it was a silly, silly video, but it's gotten more views than a lot of my videos lately. And Facebook is really not showing our videos as much, as they used to.
Right.
But I got this new pair of shoes. And I'm not really like into shoes and stuff, but I got these like I call them my mermaid shoes because they're iridescent color and they're just tennis shoes, Reeboks. But I was so excited about them that I wanted to show everybody that I got these cool shoes. But that was me. That's me just showing up as me. And people are like, "Oh my God, I love how excited you are about those shoes." I want to get a
Yeah.
pair. And it's interesting because that authenticity piece, I want to talk about that for just a second,
Sure. Yeah,
is
absolutely.
this authenticity piece. So I'm getting emotional just remembering that moment that I discovered that I had been living inauthentically my whole life. As a people pleaser, we don't really know who we are. Again, that chameleon piece, right?
Hmm.
So how can we show up authentically if we don't know who we are? As I started breaking through all those fears, the fear of judgment, my shell started coming loose, and I broke free of that shell. Finally, it took me a long time, but I got there and I finally realized who I am. And my life coach did an exercise. I'm going to share this exercise with you because this is something that could be beneficial for somebody listening right now. And the exercise was for us to sit in a room. There were about 6 women in this exercise together. Each of us sat in the room on a chair higher above everybody else. And everybody looked at us, and some of them didn't know us. It wasn't like we all knew each other. And we had to say what we saw in that person. No words, no story, no nothing. Just when I walk into a room, this is how I'm showing up. And the words that came out of that, oh my gosh, it was, I was like laughing because I didn't believe them. Like pioneer, you're a leader, you're an incredible woman. Like I can't remember all of them off the top of my head right now, but my favorite was pioneer, trailblazer. That was one. And I'm like, how do these women don't even know me? How do they see
Wow.
that in me? It's because when we show up, we are showing up, but we don't know who we are. So what that exercise did for me is for me to adopt those as my own belief in myself. I had to adopt other people's beliefs in me, the positive beliefs, to counteract all the negative beliefs that I had in myself and that other people from my past had of me. Now, once I was able to adopt those and believe those things is when I was able to finally start showing up authentically.
Wow. That's interesting. And so those women, you'd never talked to them before?
Some of them, I think maybe 2 of the 6 I
Okay.
knew, and then the other 4 never even met.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And we
really,
all did it with each other. So all 6
yeah.
of us had this exercise, and like one of them, she was sitting there, and I remember this because it was like, "Oh, yeah, I do see that." High priestess. One of her words was high priestess. I mean,
That's
how
a good one.
amazing. Yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
That's really interesting. And what an inspirational story. I mean, all of this is so inspirational, especially for someone that might be struggling with this themselves, right? So I'd love
Yeah.
to hear a little bit about your transition from now you've broken free, your authentic self, and now you really start to shine and start writing books. Had you written a book before this breakthrough or
No. Actually, I spent my whole life not interested in reading or writing. I was just the only thing I ever read was like if I was learning a new computer program and I had to learn how to use it. I just never interested in reading or like writing, forget it. I was like, I'm not a writer. I don't want to write. I have no interest in that at all.
wow.
So when social media came out and we had to write things, I was scared. I would proofread. I was a proofreader. So I did read for work because I was a
Yep.
proofreader, as a legal secretary. But other than that, I wasn't interested in it. And I would proofread every single post I did like 3 or 4 times before I would hit post. And
Okay.
one of my fears one of those days was to write a social media post that has an error in it. That was one of my
Like,
fears, and I did it. Like I intentionally put an error in it, and guess what? Nobody commented on my error.
no, probably nobody noticed.
That was my fear. That was that huge fear of judgment that they would notice that.
Wow.
So I was never interested in any of that. So how did I call myself an accidental book publisher because the journey is what brought me into this. So it was 2015 and that was the year that I was breaking through a fear every day.
Okay.
One of the people I met on that journey, I met him in January. He ended up becoming my mentor. His name is Greg Reed. And um, I was breaking through those fears, and Greg was putting together a collaboration book where you write just one story,
Mm,
and it was called Footsteps of the Fearless.
how ironic.
So, yeah, so he says, you're breaking through a fear every day. This is a perfect book for you. You really need to be in this. So I went ahead and I joined that book and was one of the co-authors in it. And then at the end of that year, I've broken through all those fears. My mentor looks at me and says, hey, that's awesome that you broke through all those fears. What are you going to do about it? I was like, what do you mean? I think I've done enough, breaking through
Yeah.
a fear every day. And he says, you need to write a book about it. And me, I say, why? Who wants to hear my story? I'm nobody. I don't have anything to share. And he says, of course you do. Look at what you just did. You can inspire people and motivate them to break through their fears. I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. So I ended up writing The Year of Fears, which was my first solo book.
Mm,
And then after that, I asked myself a question that I ask myself frequently now, and that's what's my next natural state of progression? I was in a collaboration book. I wrote my own book. I'm going to follow in my mentor's footsteps, and I'm going to put together a collaboration book. That was the idea, a collaboration book for fun. So I reached out to some of the people I met on the journey, the founder of UGG Boots, the inventor of the credit card magnetic strip, and
Oh,
the creator of the Make-A-Wish Foundation. These are all people I met. And I was like, I'm thinking of writing a book called Momentum, 13 Lessons from Action Takers Who Changed the World. Will you join me? And all of them said, yes, just tell me what I need to do. So I was
wow.
like, oh crap, I got to do it.
Now I really have to do it. Yeah.
See, I made a commitment to them before I made a commitment to myself, which was important because as a person who had so many fears, I still have fears. But as a person who had all those fears, making a commitment to somebody else made it easier for me to finish it. So,
Right.
put that book together, published it. And then after that, I was like, oh my God, that was so much fun. I'm going to do it again. So I did 2 more books, ended up launching 2 more collaboration books, ended up launching those 8 days apart, and both hit #1 international bestseller status in under 5 hours.
Wow.
That was my wow moment. Like, oh my gosh, I love this. I know what I'm doing. I am damn good at it. This is what I'm going to do. I am now a book publisher. So up until that point, that was like 4.5 years of a journey in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
And up until that point, I was like trying to figure myself out. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to make money? And one of the things I was doing was running a women's mastermind. So I called all my clients and I said, this Monday session is our last session. I am now a book publisher. Like, and I said, I'll refund you any money I owe you because I wasn't going to let that anchor hold me back. And I got to tell you, it's been like wildfire since I made that decision that day 2.5 years ago. We've published since that time, 28 #1 international bestselling books. And everything is just kind of lined up and folded in, fall into place.
Wow. That is amazing. So I don't really know much about writing or book publishing or anything like that. So when you say you published it, does that mean you wrote it and self-published, or how does that work? Because you wrote
Well,
books too, right?
yeah. And so as Action Takers Publishing, it is my company and we are the publisher. However, there's varying ranges of publisher. And so for what we do, it's called hybrid publishing, where it's like self-publishing, but with a company's name behind it. So we
Okay.
do have, yeah, we publish books for clients. We have solo authors as well as our collaborative books that we put together. We also bring in people who have a community and they want to do a collaboration book. We'll do
Yeah.
that book with them and for them and turn it into a book and you hit that bestseller status.
Wow. And so you also teach people how to write. Is that correct? Is that part of what you do?
We That's not what we do really. We
No.
can, yes, we do have people on our team that can do that. Let me put it this way. Nobody's ever asked us.
Okay.
So let me put it
Okay.
that way. So if we were encountered with somebody who said, "Can you teach me how to write?" Yes, we can do that.
Okay. All right. Well, now let me ask you, let's go back to the born or made idea, right? So you definitely felt that leader within you when you were young before you ran away and all of that. So what was your life like when you were working, maybe after high school or even through school? Did you feel that sense of leadership at that point at all, or was it completely stifled by then?
Completely stifled. And that as I look back, so here's the thing. As I look back on my life, I see that I was a leader, but I never knew I was a leader. And I never like tapped into, oh, let me lead. It was always, I was just doing my thing, but I didn't believe in myself enough to see myself as a leader. At age 20, I worked at a bank. I was a bank teller. I had 49 jobs in 36 years. So I had a lot of different experiences, but I became like not a manager, but like assistant manager at a bank at age 20. As I look
Wow.
back, I'm like, wow, that was a leader,
That is a leader. Yeah.
but I didn't see myself as a leader. And it was really stifled because my all the different things that had been said to me, like my ex-husband on a daily basis would say, you're stupid, you're ignorant, People
Ugh.
are only nice to you because they feel sorry for you. And I believed him. So that's where my brain was coming from, was that I'm stupid, I'm ignorant. They only gave me this job because they like me or they feel sorry for me. Guess what? They feel
Uh,
sorry for me. So those were my beliefs.
wow. But that's awful that you ended up, you went through that as a child and then ended
Yeah.
up with
Yeah.
that ultimately as an adult. Did you finally break free from him? I'm hoping. I'm assuming by now,
Yeah.
yes. But
I did. Yeah. So I met him at 19. We had 2 kids together. And at 21, I walked out on him and literally walked out because I didn't have a car. So I had a diaper bag, a purse, a 4-week-old in a baby carrying case, and a 14-month-old on my hip. And I walked out. I was like, I'm not repeating my mom's life, because my mom had been in that abuse for decades and I witnessed it, all
yeah,
the time. And so I was like, I'm not repeating that. I'm not going to live that kind of life. I'm taking a stand. And even though I made that really bold move, here's the thing, like people are like, wow, that's so brave to do that, right? But the reality in that moment was that I had a fear of staying and I had a fear of leaving. This is what happens in abusive relationships, is that we have this fear of leaving because they make us believe that we need them. And so in that moment, I was just choosing the lesser fear. The lesser fear was to leave than it was to stay. So really, a lot of times when we're making decisions that are fearful kind of decisions, we're
mhm,
making those decisions based on what we believe to be the lesser fear.
yeah. And that's, to me, that's very interesting because you recognized a bad situation when you were 5 and you left. And you
Hmm.
recognized a bad situation in your marriage and you left. To me, that's pretty brave. But you were so fearful, the lesser fear. But to me, that seems pretty brave because a lot of women don't leave that quickly in a bad marriage, unfortunately, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
that's amazing. So back then, if you can think about back then in your life, if you
Hmm.
were you in a leadership role often in your job? In your, how many jobs did you say?
49.
49 jobs.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. So I laugh at that because that's something I often say because I was definitely born an entrepreneur and could not stay in a job. I hated authority. I felt like a bird in a cage. It just I hated it, right? So it was that kind of how you felt? Is that why you had so many jobs?
Well, it wasn't that as much as feeling underappreciated. I now know that my ex-husband was wrong. I'm not stupid and I'm not ignorant. I'm actually a very brilliant woman and
I
I have a
see.
lot to offer and a lot of value. But my employers also didn't recognize that, which is kind of sad because you think about all those employees with 49 jobs, you would think one of them would appreciate, what I had to offer. Actually, I take that
Uh,
back. One did appreciate. The longest I ever stayed on any job was a year and a half. One year I had 8 W-2s, 8 jobs, right? And
wow.
yeah, and that was like, oh, I had to have a spreadsheet to make sure I got all my W-2s in before I could file my taxes. But there was one job where this one boss recognized, my brilliance. And every month and a half, she would give me a new assignment, keep me interested, keep me excited. And the only reason I didn't stay on that job is because when she left, the new boss took over. I said, this, if you want to keep me, this is what you need to do. And she didn't do it. So she
Uh,
didn't see the value of me to do that. So with the job, see, I never really saw myself as entrepreneurial, but I know that I was. Now, now I know that I was. But back
right.
then, again, money, money fears, how would I be able to do anything? I'm so stupid. All right. See, again, those beliefs were so ingrained within me as a child and then carried on with my ex-husband that I carried those beliefs around. And so as I was making my way through life, I was just doing what I had to do to survive. I had 2 little kids. I was a single mom for several years before I met my current husband that I've been with for 36 years, and we
Oh, no,
absolutely adore each other.
good.
Well, even that, like when I first got together with him, after about a year, I was like, when is he going to leave me?
Yeah.
When is he going to recognize how dumb I am? When is he going to catch on to me? And here we are 36 years later, and I've made a lot of growth through that. But the journey of of getting to that point is what, to me, I find fascinating. Is like, why, I've met a lot of people who have grown up in abusive environments. And why do some of them succeed early and others don't? Why was I one of those who believed all those things while others are like, I'm going to show you, what is it about us that makes us so different that we either glom onto what people are saying about us in the negative, as opposed to others who are like, I don't believe that. That's not who I am. This is who I am. What is it? I don't know the answer to that
I
question,
know.
but yeah,
I don't
it's
either.
fascinating, right? And it's
Yeah,
like,
it is.
that
You know,
that person had a horrible life. Like, how come they didn't let that stop them like I did?
yeah, that is so interesting. I mean, that's that question I could ask myself every day. And I have to say you are such an inspiration to me because I'm also 51. And I feel like in my head, my negative self-talk says, "Oh, you're too old to do anything now." You know what I mean? And I'm just now starting. I just started my own digital marketing company, my funnel building company, and I'm really starting to grow now. And in my head, I'm thinking, "Oh, you're already 51. What are you going to do now?" So your
Yeah.
story is so inspiring to me.
Life starts at 51. Well, for me, it started at 50. For some, it's 49. Some, it's 55. But the
Yeah.
thing is that I think the more we really tap into who we are, the more experiences that we can have, and then the more joy we have. It's like every day I am me. And that's the best thing I can do for myself, is to show up as me every day wherever I go. And if I'm doing that, then everything else will fall into place. I I'm loving my life so much now that I can't imagine the first 51 years. They're kind of like such a distant past for me. That's not who I am at all. I have turned into a person that I always thought was a fake person. you know so, as I was growing up, my beliefs, I grew up in a family that was very judgmental. And so I would see people doing things that were really great things. And I would be like, who do they think they are? That was how I thought. And I would say things like, oh, that's for them. Like do interviewing stars on the red carpet, something I do now. I was like, I could never do anything like that. I'm not good enough for that, but I'm doing it. And it's kind of like these things that I'm doing today are things that I showed up as an opportunity. And I said, I'm going to seize that opportunity. One of my favorite sayings I came up with during that year of fears, I came up with 750 quotes by the way during that year. But one of my favorites is to see the opportunity, then seize the opportunity.
Oh,
How
yeah.
many times are we letting our fear stop us from
Oh,
breaking
yeah.
through, a door that was closed, or meeting somebody that would lead to something else? And so I've been seizing opportunities for the last, what has it been now? 9 years. Nine
That is
years.
so amazing. I want to ask you something about your year of fears. Um, you had mentioned some fears that were debilitating would be, starting a conversation with a stranger or, going out to eat by yourselves. Those I can imagine like tactile. What's the word? Tactically, those are easier, I would think. And correct me if I'm wrong. Easier to challenge than maybe say a fear of something internal, like a fear of rejection. Say, right? So those a fear a year. How did you challenge those fears that were more internal rather than like a physical action?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, each fear, I was trying to think how to say this. So each fear required an action. I had to do something.
Okay.
Sometimes it was something for myself, and sometimes it was something around other people. The vast majority of them were about other people, though, because my fear of judgment was, what will they think of me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, so when I had a fear of, like, even just if you think about, the public speaking, I had to really dive in deep within myself to change my physiology of, physiology
Yeah.
related to getting on a stage. To take that action of getting on the stage, I had to do a lot of work up here in my
Right.
head
Right.
in order to get onto that stage. So every single fear, no matter what it is, we're going to have either there's going to be an action at the end or not, because if you don't take the action, you're not going to break through the fear.
Right.
And so, yeah, so there's either the action of, there's the action at the end, which is making the movement. But then before that, there's the psychological that's going on. Like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make it happen? And then I came up with this saying, and I actually wrote a book about it called Do It Because You're Scared. So I now will say, oh, that's just fear. Because again, I still have fears because I'm a human, right? And
Sure.
so I say, oh, that's just fear. I'm going to do this because I'm scared.
Wow.
There's sayings like, feel the fear and do it anyway. That is disempowering. I have not empowered myself with my fear by doing it anyway. But if you say, that's fear, I'm going to do this because I'm scared, what happens is you're saying, I'm using the fear as fuel. I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm going to let it propel me forward by breaking through this fear. So there's a lot of emotional and mental stuff that has to go on before we actually break through the fear. I've gotten to the point where there's that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it kind of thing.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
all these different sayings that people have come up with for us about fear. And so I'll share this one. There's an acronym, false evidence appearing real. That's an acronym I've heard a lot,
Yes. I've
false
heard that.
evidence appearing real.
Yep.
I'm brushing my teeth. I'm about 6 months into breaking through these fears. And I'm brushing my teeth. I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, well, I'm not saying it because my mouth's full of toothpaste, but like false evidence appearing real. These fears do not appear real. They are real to me. And, there's nothing false about them at all. And so I was just like, that's a stupid saying. So I ended up coming up with my own acronym for fear. And that is that faith erases anxious reactions.
Ah.
You can't have fear and faith at the same time. So what this means is that if I'm experiencing fear, then my faith is weak. So what do I need to do? I need to switch it. I need to increase my faith so my fear will lessen and sometimes go away. And this is faith in yourself that you can do it. This is, if you can't do it because you're not strong enough to do it, then this is faith in your mentors and coaches, those positive, uplifting people in your life, those cheerleaders, those that will encourage you across the finish line. And if that's not enough, then tap into, I believe in God. So I tap into God and I'm like, oh, I'm helpless. I can't do this. I need your help, and then I go do it because I'm scared.
Wow. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I love that. You said how many quotes have you come up with?
Over 750.
You should write a book of just your quotes.
I know. I wanted
Right?
to do something, I'll share with you because maybe one of your listeners is somebody that wants to do this with me, like a combine or whatever.
Yeah.
Is I wanted to do a picture book that has my quotes. So it's a picture with my quotes. And I wanted to be like real pictures, nature type of pictures.
Mhm.
And I almost did this with a National Geographic photographer, but then something happened in her family and she just kind of disappeared. I hope she's okay. I never heard from her again, but I would love to do something like that with somebody who wants to take my quotes and like, oh, this is a great picture for
Put a
that. Because
picture.
I don't know how to make that stuff come together.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh. That would be cool though. That really would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Huh.
I was thinking I could do the quote and then share a short snippet story of how that quote came to be,
Hmm.
because every quote came from an experience that I had.
Right, right. Well, maybe we can find somebody to do that with
Yeah,
you.
that'd be awesome.
So, what are you doing now other than publishing? Are you coaching yourself, or do you have any um, students? What's going on with you now?
So, the publishing is probably I'd say like 95% of what I do related to business. And then the other 5% is I take on no more than 2 clients at a time, helping them to break through their fears. because that fear can stop us from being who we really are. And
Mhm.
so I love it when I'm able to help somebody to break through a massive fear that they've had. And sometimes it takes a little longer than others. You never know how long it's going to take, but I don't take on more than 2 clients at a time doing that because it's draining for me.
Yeah, it was really hands-on. I mean, imagine, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It's
to
so
give the
amazing.
best time and service. You don't, yeah, you can't be, I would imagine, can't be working with that many people. So that makes sense to me. Wow,
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. Well, Linda, we're coming to the end of our interview here, but as a end to all my interviews, I always fire off a few random questions just so we can get to know you
Okay.
better. All right. And the first one I'm going to ask you, if given the opportunity, Linda, would you go to space and walk on the moon?
Yes. Why? Because I'm scared.
Oh, I should have known you were going to say that. I should have known. Yeah, that is funny because yeah, no, I don't think I would, even though I am terrified.
Okay, and let me with one caveat, I would only do it if somebody sponsored me. I'm not gonna pay. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
pay to do something like that.
yeah, okay. All right, cool. And then if you could have dinner with anybody in the world, alive or dead, who would it be?
Oh, I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is the first time this thought came to mind. It would be my dad. It'd be my dad.
Really?
Yeah, because there was a lot of stuff that happened, during his life that I was so scared to talk to him because of how abusive he was. But I would sit with him and let him know that I have forgiven him and that I have gratitude for all the things he did do.
That's awesome. That is so
Yeah.
awesome. I
I can't
love that
believe I came up
answer.
with that answer. Like, why would I?
I love that answer.
Yeah.
And then lastly, this is a funny question for you because of what you do, but I always ask everybody, what is the one book that has inspired them most in life, whether it be fiction or nonfiction?
That's a hard one because there are a lot. I love reading. Personal development are my favorite, and business books. Those are
Yeah.
my two favorites to read. But we put together a book called The Book I Read, and in the book I read, people are sharing a book that changed their life. But we don't want to hear like a book review or book report. We want to know what's the transformation you got from that book. And so my book that I chose in our volume 1, we're doing volume 2 right now. Volume 1 of that book, I chose The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. And the success principles, if I remember correctly, it's like 101 principles to success or what
Right.
have you. But the very first principle was, it wasn't even the whole book that changed my life. It was just the title of the first principle. I didn't even need to read the first principle, but I did. So the first principle is to take 100% responsibility for your life. I
Mm.
had never done that with either good things. If something bad happened, I would blame others. And if something good happened, I never took credit for it.
Wow.
Yeah. So that would be it, the success principles.
Awesome. Wow. That's great. And so lastly, what's on the horizon for you? I mean, you mentioned you're working on something now. Do you have any big new adventures ahead?
Yeah, definitely. It's related to books, of course.
Mm.
Just recently I've been kind of thrusted into, or I've gotten opportunities to get thrusted into the celebrity world. So right now I'm in talks with 5 different celebrities about publishing their books. And so that's exciting because that's something again that like I never thought that I would be able to do something like that because that's
Yeah.
for all the big publishers. Why would somebody work with us? And so my imposter syndrome, would show up related to that. But I pushed it aside and said, I'm going to go do what I need to do in order to make this happen. And it's happening.
Wow. How exciting is that? I know, and you
Yeah. So
mentioned
it's,
I didn't even ask you about it. I have to ask you about it before we stop talking here, but you mentioned that you're interviewing on the red carpet?
yeah, I started doing red carpet interviews several years ago. And, I'm going to share with you how that happened. I'll make this a short story because I know
That's
we're
okay. Yeah.
out of time.
Please. I'm interested.
Yeah, so because of my mentor, so my mentor is the person who's been the catalyst for me meeting all these different people in my life, and these people who we look as celebrity-ish kind of people. And
Sure.
so there was this event happening that I was invited to. It's called City Gala at the time. It's no longer in existence, but with City Gala, they would do a red carpet event at the Academy Awards. It was an after party, Academy Awards after party. And they would have, hundreds of stars would come down the red carpet. And I asked my mentor, I said, hey, do you think that they'll let me, interview the stars on the red carpet? And he's a man of few words, by the way. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, will they let me interview stars on the red carpet? And he goes, I don't know. Why don't you ask them? I was like, just ask? You mean I just need to ask? And so, and I did know the people because he knew them, right? So I had a connection to them. And so I just reached out and said, hey, can I interview stars on the red carpet? And they're like, yeah, we'll put your name on the list. Just like that.
What?
All it took was me asking. So my mentor explained it this way. He said, Lynda, you're not really asking them for a favor. You're doing them a favor. And I said, what? I'm doing them a favor? He said, yeah, they have 100-foot red carpet. They need paparazzi on that carpet for those stars that are coming through. They need you.
Wow.
And that was like a total shift in mindset. And
Yeah.
that one thing right there helped me to start seeing things differently. Like, what if they need me, whoever it is? Instead of me thinking I'm begging for something, what if they need me? And showing up that way.
Talk about a reframe. That's awesome. I love that so much. So did you
I do need to close one loop that I left earlier.
Yeah, please.
And then I said, there are 4 words that my mentor said to me that have changed my life. And those 4 words are, you think too much.
If I could tell you how many times I've been told that in my life, oh my goodness.
So stop thinking, start doing, right? Because a lot of times fear is what makes us overanalyze.
Yeah. Wow.
Stop thinking and just start doing.
Wow. This was such a great I mean, I could stay here and talk to you all day. This has been so awesome to talk to you. So if anybody wants to reach out to you or find you, how I'm going to have it in the show notes, obviously, but if you wouldn't mind just letting them know how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, I'm on all the socials as Lynda Sunshine West. That's Lynda Sunshine West. Also, our website is actiontakerspublishing.com. We'd love to tell your story. Every single one of us has an important story to tell. And as Maya Angelou so eloquently said, there's nothing, no greater agony than dying with an untold story. Your story's ready to be told.
So true. All right. Well, Lynda, I thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your wisdom and just encouragement. This was great.
Thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it. Born or made, I'm both.
Love it.